Hey everyone, welcome back to the MHP Show. I am your host, Derek Vickers. As you all know, on the MHP Show, we talk about anything and everything that has to do with mobile home parks, operations, crazy things that happen. We talk about financing, we talk about underwriting, all that stuff. And so today I have another guest with us. But first, I want to talk about our free webinar that we have going at go.parkinvestingpro.com. Basically, it's 75 minutes of me talking about the basics of buying your first mobile home park and the basics of how to actually underwrite a deal and figure out if it's a good deal to buy or not. Because I know when I was starting in this business, it was difficult for me to actually understand like what the heck was actually a good deal. So I put together this free webinar. It's got the slides to it and everything that you can actually learn that step-by-step process and how to actually figure out that when you're looking at a deal, whether this deal is good or not, and not to waste your time. So please check that out. That's go.parkinvestingpro.com. So now I'm going to get into it. I've got Mr. Judah Aderet here. He is the principal at Princeton Capital Group, and he is a financing genius. You know, we've talked many times on the phone. He's got a great company, and wanted to have him on to discuss some few things. So, Judah, welcome, dude.
That. Thank you. Never had the term genius, so I got to add that to my resume.
You got to add it, man. You got to add it.
Yeah, it's on there. I just put it on.
There you go. There you go.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me on. I've watched a couple of your podcasts, and it's always fascinating. Some of the guests that you have on, some guys that I'm familiar with, and some really cool guys within the MH space. And I'm honored to be invited, honestly.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So tell us a little bit how you got into this. I know you and I had talked about it before, but tell our listeners how you actually ended up in mobile home parks. It's not, nobody ever, I don't think I woke up 10 years ago and was like, hey, man, I definitely want to own trailer parks. And so I can imagine you had the same thoughts. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So my background was really traditional multifamily. I have some family-owned real estate up here in the Northeast. Started with my dad, my brothers. I got into the family business on the management side. I lasted there for around a few weeks, and then quickly discovered I'm not a manager to be knocking on doors and getting chased by dogs. So there's nothing against dogs. I love dogs, just not love getting chased by them. So my brother suggested, hey, how about you go try, you're good with numbers, look at the asset management part of the business and see what that looks like for you. So I started working for him on just asset management, starting to understand what went into putting a deal together, and especially largely invested my time in the debt side of things. Within a couple of months, he's an active guy, but doesn't have that much going on the debt side. I left and joined a national brokerage firm based out of Jersey, and was looking to expand my business and my knowledge and bring new clients in on the debt side. And of course, my relationships were all multifamily. That's what I knew. That's the connections that I had through my family. But of course, when you join a larger firm, they give you a list of cold calls to make. And there's cold leads. You got to just reach out and, hey, I'm calling from. And one of the gentlemen I called, I said, we do financing around the country. And he's like, do you finance mobile home parks? And I'm like, yep, we do. And I had no clue what a mobile home park was, and let alone know if we actually finance it. But I'm just trying to say we finance everything, because I knew that and it was a large firm, and they had many different divisions, from healthcare to hotels to multifamily office. So I just responded yes. And he started asking me some basic questions about, what lenders look for in mobile home parks. And I was so green behind my ears. I'm lucky that he was a nice enough gentleman, and I would name him, but he said that I should stop naming him on the podcast. He was nice enough to say, hey, doesn't seem like you know that much about mobile home parks. How about we schedule a call with a senior broker? who has more knowledge in the space. So I quickly hung up and I said, great, I'll call you back. I'll schedule a call. I ran around the entire firm asking who here has knowledge of mobile home parks. And it was one broker out of, we're talking about 100 plus brokers who had financed at that point, I think 2 mobile home parks. And he was like, yeah, I think I'm knowledgeable enough to get on a call with you. I've done this. So long story short, that was the first of many. I quickly discovered that, like, hey, if there's no one else doing this, that was the first thing I loved about mobile home parks, was that no one else was doing it on the debt side. No one else was, at least to my knowledge, making it a focus and a niche of theirs that they're going to go out. And I understand why, because the deals are typically smaller, they're hairier, they're tougher. There's a smaller pool of lenders out there. And it's also a very unique debt structure. And a lot of times the underwriting structure is different than a typical deal. So it takes a lot more work. And sometimes some people might look at it as less reward because the deals are smaller and fees are smaller. But I kind of just dove in. I did the first few deals for that kind of gentleman. They gave me another shot at a decent phone call. We actually delivered with him, with a bank that we had a relationship with that was able to get aggressive. And then he started introducing me to friends, invited me and said, you got to come out to some of these conferences, some of these shows, some of these meetups. And, it's snowballed from there to the point where COVID hit of 2020, and myself and my partner were like, let's take the jump. Things are going to be slow now. Market's going to be slow for who knows how long right now. Let's take this opportunity to start off on our own and make a greater focus. At that point, I was running the mobile home park division over at the larger firm, but it was like 60% of my business at that point, even though multifamily, I still love to call my bread and butter, and it still is today. But mobile home parks kind of have a special place in my heart. And also in today's economy, which I'm sure we'll get to, it's made up of a big bulk of our business, thank God. So we made the jump, and little did we know the economy as a whole was going to explode in a good way, and especially in our little space here. So that's the long and short of how I landed in the mobile home park space, and I'm loving it ever since.
That's awesome. And that's funny you said that, we jumped out on our own in 2020 in hoping for a slowdown. There's not going to be that much business. And little did you know.
Yeah, it literally exploded out of the gate. Like we couldn't even get, I remember we were still working out of our houses because we were looking for office space. Mm-hmm. And we weren't so desperate for office space. We were like, in the beginning, things, let's just set up stuff. And then things were just like, coming and I thank my clients that stayed with me, obviously, but it was just, as we all know, it didn't slow down even slightly until much later. Yeah.
No, no, it did not. Were you guys doing multifamily then too? Or were you just doing MH?
Yeah, we were still doing multifamily. I would say we closed probably in our first year in business as Princeton Capital Group. We closed just over 100 transactions. And I think 65 of those were MH/RV.
Okay.
And the rest were multifamily, some single tenant, special asset classes.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I know that was a busy time. I wanted to back up and something you said here, because I love this. So you said when you started that brokerage firm, they basically gave you a cold list, and you had to burn up that list and start, dialing for dollars.
Yeah.
And I have a special admiration for people that actually can go in and do that, because it's not easy. Like, how many times did you get hung up on or beat up? Probably a good bit.
Yeah. I would say 90 out of 100 calls are total duds. So whether it's out of service numbers and these were leads that were pretty polished leads. So they weren't necessarily out of service, or that they were the wrong number, or was the manager of a property and not the owner, or a guy that used to work at a certain real estate firm but now is working as a clerk in a library. So it's 90 out of 100 calls were total duds, and then out of the 10 that were real, we'll call them, I would say 5 of them would hang up in the first 30 seconds, and then The remaining 5, probably 3 of them were just, they gave you the good, time to just give your little spiel and then said, sorry, we have our relationships. And, if there's anything, we'll reach out. And then you have those 2 out of 100, I would say, that are maybes, and you got to work them and call them back and put reminders. But yeah, back in the day, I was making probably 200, 250 calls a day. Easy.
And did those skills that you learned doing that, whatever they were, because they're aplenty, because I can go on for days about this, like, how did that help you get the confidence to go out and start on your own?
That's a great question. I would say that the learning how to be tenacious is the biggest thing that comes to mind. Learning how to get out there and not care about what other people are saying or what other people are thinking. Like, the number one fear I feel like people have when they're making cold calls is like, the guy on the other line is going to be laughing at me. And it's like, you never met the guy. You probably won't ever meet him if he's going to be laughing at you. Because if he's laughing at you, it's not a guy for you. And if it's not going to be laughing at you and he'll appreciate you, so then go for it. Just give it all you got. I think that that's really a mindset that you got to take in order to be able to just keep going. And you got to be fearless in that way of, I'm going to get no's and I'm going to get shot down. And it's the same, whether it's starting your own business or when I'm sending out a deal for a client to numerous lenders, I know that a lot of them are going to come back and say no. And I know a lot of them I'm going to have to go and fight them and beg them and push them and try to push the merits of the deal. But it's all about knowing that, I think there's a great book out there that I read back in the day. I forgot right now the name of the book, but it's basically, the concept is that every no is closer to a yes. So every no that you get, you're getting closer to that yes. Like, it's all a numbers game. So you're going to go through 100 no's till you get to that yes, 1,000 no's till you get to that yes. Whatever that number is, look at every no as, all right, that's it, done, next. I'm getting closer to my goal here.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I would say, like, one of my biggest strengths is persistence. And I totally think I got that when I, from cold calling all the time, because you have to just push through. And even when I would get stuff scheduled in the insurance business, it would cancel, and you'd have to, be tenacious and get that stuff back on the books because it was 100% commission. And so I had to make it work.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great point for listeners, because I know people say that cold calling's dead and blah, 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 blah. But like, the skills that you learn, it sucks, right? But the skills that you learn are super, super valuable, for sure.
And I'm sure someone like yourself probably has picked up some off-market deals through those same exact skills of just cold calling sellers and cold calling, owners, and trying to get them to sell you their parks.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. So now I want to talk about, kind of, the buzz around, any kind of real estate right now, and just the market that we're in right now, and I talk to people every day and I hear horror stories. And so, can you get a deal done right now?
You definitely can. I mean, that's the emphatic answer here is you definitely can. There are deals that get done. There are deals that we're still closing, and not only us. And I know of others plenty of others that are getting deals across the finish line. Are they tougher? 1,000%. My wife wants to know, how come I'm not home more often? Because if the market is so slow, where are you? And the answer is, I'll be the first to say our deal volume is down over 50%. And maybe even more than that by now from last year, in July. But every deal is 10 to 15 times the amount of work on just my end. And I'm just one piece of the puzzle. I'm just a debt broker. And I know that it's this way from the buyer's end. The syndicator's end is, equity became 10 times harder to obtain from investors. Everything from soup to nuts in a deal became a lot more difficult. Mainly to do with, fear out there. I believe it's fear. It's whether it's on my end, the bank's fear because of some of those bank collapses. It's investor fear because of some of the deals that they went into that didn't perform as as well as they should have or could have. It's the fear of where interest rates are going. So it's a lot of fear out there, which some of it is substantiated, some of it is just, you know, some fake news. But
For sure.
but there's definitely a reality that hits the table today, which is whether or not the fear is real or not. But today, getting a deal across the finish line is a lot harder than it ever was. But there are deals getting done. There are deals that still make sense. If they're creative with financing, I'm losing more deals today than ever to sellers financing, because a lot of people are choosing to go, especially in our space, to go that route. With rates where they are, some deals just don't pencil, and you got to go the seller's financing route, at least for a short term. But yeah, I haven't heard that many horror stories. I've heard more, I've had deals, obviously, that, banks didn't necessarily even retrade. They told you day one. Nowadays, banks kind of tell you, here's our term letter or a term sheet or our application, but be advised, this is nothing set in stone here. Not the rate, not the term, not the loan amount. And it's like, all right, let me throw this onto the craps table. So, so there have been obviously stories, even in our small little business, of banks that come back and, sorry, we can't hit that rate, we can't hit that leverage, and leaves a buyer scrambling and therefore sometimes pulling out of deals, for sure. But there definitely are some good deals out there that are getting done.
Yeah, and I've heard people that are still getting deals done. And what I hate about this whole thing, and what you said with fear and the perception of fear in the market, Jay Powell could come on the news tonight and say he's lowering interest rates and everybody's happy tomorrow and deals are flying, right? Or he could come on and say, he could just kind of say, I don't know, we're probably going to raise, like he's doing, and sends everybody into turmoil.
Frenzy. Yeah.
And I hate that. And, you have one Fed governor that goes on Bloomberg and says, oh my God, we need to stop raising rates. And then another one comes on and they say, oh my God, we need to raise them more. And so there's just so much confusion out there in the market. And I think, and that's just my opinion, like I hate that. But, I think
really strong camps with like really smart, intellectual, learned individuals on each side. One camp saying, we got to raise interest rates, we got to curb inflation, we got to keep raising interest. And the other one being like, no, don't you dare, that this is going to cause all hell to break loose. We got to cut interest rates. So it's creating such, like you said, confusion and therefore fear, because when people are confused, that's when they're the most fearful and most scared to take the next step, or to put money out there or put their neck on the line to get deals done, for sure.
Yeah. And I hate, the inflation thing is such a long-term thing. Like, I don't even think we've seen the effects from the rate hikes, 6 to 8 months ago. Like, we're not going to see that for a while. And so I think for them to just, I know they did stop, but they keep going. I just don't think we've even seen the effects of the last, 5 raises yet. Right. So, it's just interesting.
It's definitely hurting. And I mean, in the short term, whether in the long term it will help us or not, that's yet to be seen. What we do know is in the short term, it's definitely hurting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we've got, Judah, I'll tell you, so we've got, a lot of new operators and seasoned veterans that, listen to our show. So I remember when I was starting off in this business, I was like, okay, I can go in, I can operate this thing. I can figure out seller financing. You have people talk about seller financing all the time. But when I was first buying parks in 2020, there was so much cash out there that no one would seller finance. So like, dude, I've got so-and-so that's going to pay cash tomorrow. Why would I seller finance to you when you have no deals? And so one of my biggest concerns was financing. So if you're new in this business, like, let's just say we've got a new guy who's got a deal, a $3 million deal, he brings it to you. How can the new operator, make your life easier to go out and actually, get a bank that's willing to do that deal?
Yeah. That's probably the number one question out there. I think the best way to prepare yourself is to go in at least on your first couple of deals with a seasoned, experienced operator. And while I get that that means you're not making that much on your first couple of deals because you got to give something, or if not significant something, to this potential partner, but it doesn't only make my life easier on the lending side, which obviously that's the first question that banks ask, and especially in today's market where they're so, getting back to the word, fearful of deals going sideways. And you come to the table with an experienced operator, you get half the amount of questions that you get when you send out a deal for a new operator. And I'm dealing with this actually as we speak. My emails are closed, but I'm sure I've gotten a couple of emails back now. I sent out a deal just yesterday for a guy who is brand new. It's actually two guys. They're brand new, great guys, and I think they're going to do amazing. And it's a pretty small deal. It's just over $1.5 million purchase price. But what I told them was, we'll try without a partner, right? Like, you guys don't own any real estate. They have small, one of them has dabbled in some single family rental flips, and another one has previously worked for a larger MH operator, but on their own, looking at their personal financial statements and their real estate schedules and their experience. It's not like they have anything that they're bringing strong to the table other than, we know the space, I've worked in the space, etc. So it's a good story, and I think they'll do well. But like I told them, without another partner, either we'll get lucky and there will be a local bank that will hit, and a local bank will be like, yeah, we love this property. We, as long as it's a guy that we think will do a good job, we're comfortable enough. But if you're going to start going out to more of the regional banks or the national banks where they're not super familiar with this particular deal, then they're going to come back, and I already got some responses 2 hours after I signed that deal yesterday. Do these guys own anything else? And so the number one thing to prepare yourself for is, I'm not saying to go out there and, give away the deal, and right away sell your soul to someone else, and be really careful of who you partner with, obviously, and what type of agreement you have in place, and to make sure it's not a long-term agreement, and that this partner understands that it's for the first few deals to help you kind of get on your feet. But you definitely should have, at least what I ask borrowers is, come to me with, hey, I would love to get this done on my own, and I know that, and I would love for you to get it done on your own too, but at least have a backup here. This is my backstop. If banks need, I have so and so who's willing to partner with me on this deal and come in and sign on the dotted line.
Right. And are they looking for someone more from an experience perspective or a balance sheet perspective?
So depending on who the smaller guys are, right? So if the newbies, we'll call them, are total newbies and they don't have anything to do with MH and they have no balance sheet, then I would say the banks are going to be looking for both of this from this potential partner.
Yeah.
Both the experience but sometimes you'll have newbies, like the guys that I just mentioned. One of them has been working for a larger MH operator for a number of years, so he has kind of the experience, and I think that part I can sell to a bank. Hey, this guy knows the business. He's watched it from the inside, and he was even, boots on the ground. So then their only concern is probably more on the balance sheet side. So then it's a matter of finding someone strong, even if he doesn't necessarily have the experience in the space.
Yeah. So break that down for our listeners, because when I was new, I didn't really understand that. So yes, recourse debt, you have to personally guarantee the debt, but break that down for us. And what is the bank looking for? Do they need, if the loan's $2 million, do you need to have $2 million cash in the bank, or what does that look like?
Sure. You definitely don't need $2 million cash in the bank, because they understand that if you did, then you wouldn't necessarily need the loan from them. So I would say that the typical standard metrics that a bank looks for is a net worth equal to the loan amount. So that doesn't have to mean cash in the bank equal to the loan amount, but a combined net worth between all your assets, your cars, your other real estate, your house, anything you own minus your liabilities, that gives you your net worth. That should be equal or close enough to equal the loan amount. And typically most banks are looking for 10% of the loan amount in cash. So if you're going for $1 million loan, they want to see $100,000 cash in the bank. And it starts getting, obviously, the line gets, I would say, grayer, or, you could move that line around as the deals get larger. I have borrowers ask me like, hey, well, I'm going to try to do a $15 million loan. I have to show 1.5 liquid. I mean, that's ridiculous. I don't have 1.5 liquid. I'm raising from investors. And so the answer to that is, obviously, as the deals get larger, lenders start relaxing that, that box a little bit. But I would say that's a good metric to go by, is net worth equal or close to equal the loan amount, and cash equal to 10% of the loan amount.
Yeah. That's great information, because I get questions, like this all the time. And like, I remember in the beginning for me, so the first deal we actually bought cash, but the second deal we went to a bank, and I didn't really understand any of this yet.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand, like, I'll tell you one big mistake I did. So we got these atrocious seller financials, and I actually sent them to the bank, like the paper, like, and of course the guy comes back and he's like, dude, we're not doing this. The guy's making $3,000 a month. And I'm like, okay, there's first mistake that I made. Anyways, that property, would have been a great deal for them, by the way. That property brings in almost $30,000 a month now. Wow. But anyways, great information, because I get this question all the time. And I know it was a big question that I had in the beginning, like, how the heck do I go to the bank? Like, I've never done this before. Like, I don't know how to do it. Yeah. And so any other tips you can give that you didn't share there on that particular thing?
I would say some people have net worth that they're not aware of. And what I mean by that is, people don't realize that banks consider a life insurance policy as part of your net worth. Your wife's jewelry is part of your net worth. The diamond ring that you use to propose is part of your net worth. Your cars is part of your net worth. Paintings, if you have some nice paintings. So if you go around and figure out a lot of these small, quote unquote, small stuff, they can add up pretty quickly when you start to realize, hey, I do have some more valuable stuff here that I can utilize to show on a balance sheet that I am worth a little bit more. And people tend to be a little shy and like, no, I don't know. I don't really have that. Like today I might, but then I have to go pay a grocery bill and some other stuff. And well, it's like, okay, give me the highest number that you think. And obviously we all know banks are going to take that number and they're going to slash it by whatever amount they do. So don't do the bank's job for them. You go out there with guns blazing and, get as close to net worth to Donald Trump as you can, and let the bank then go back and start slimming that down. Don't slim it down for them.
Right. What about Louis Vuitton bags? Do they count?
Yeah, those count. Those definitely count.
Don't tell. I'm not going to tell my wife that. She's going to be like, see,
and
you're like,
I'm doing you a favor.
Yeah, exactly. I can't give her any more ammunition. Like I got her one, and she's got a couple bags, but she's like, look, this bag now is worth, $5,500, and we paid this amount for it. And I'm like, oh yeah, so you're building equity in your Louis Vuitton bags now. Yeah. So guys, hey, look, that's great information. So your wife that's gotten you for Louis Vuitton and Chanel and that, you can actually add that to your balance sheet when you're going to a bank to get your first mobile home park loan. That's great information, dude, because I never even thought about that. I was just like, okay, this is just...
That's money gone. Yeah. You look at it as money spent, money gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. So what else? I had another question here for you. So what do you, I guess other than some of the other things that we had talked about that you're seeing in the market, like what is your forecast for, what we have coming down? What is this business going to look like in a year, I guess, from an interest rate perspective and just from an MH perspective?
Yeah. I think if I knew the answer to the interest rate perspective, I wouldn't have time to be on your show.
Right.
I would be like, super popular, taking appointments by, $1 million slots for 10 minutes. So the interest rate, I mean, God knows. It's really, like we discussed before. There's two opposing camps on what to do with their interest rates. It depends on what happens in the marketplace and how many horror stories will there be out there. Will there be blood in the streets? And obviously, as much as people can say, no, they're not cutting interest rates, they're not going to cut interest rates. If, God forbid, we see, what some of these, forecasts are showing, that with the current interest rates, there's $2 billion in debt that is not possible to even pay off. So you're going to start seeing deals defaulting and large operators in big trouble. The second that happens, interest rates will come down faster than they went up.
Yeah.
They're not here to even the people on that camp are not here to entirely take the economy. So it's anyone's guess of what could happen with interest rates. In regards to what we'll see in our industry, I think a year from now we'll be in a little bit of a better place than we are today, possibly. I think people are going to slowly, as much as people want to sit on the sidelines, whether it's investors or buyers, and they're scared and they don't know what to make of the market. The longer that it persists, the more that you get comfortable with it, and the more that you start to realize, all right, let me adjust to this new reality, and let me figure out how to make it work in this new reality. And that's tough. It's tough to make adjustments like that. It's tough to, I don't like to use the word pivot, but kind of pivot within your reality of, okay, now in order to get this deal done, I got to do X, Y, and Z. I think that we're going to be in a little bit of a better place than we are. I think that for the most part, most borrowers' basis in MH deals is pretty safe. We are in the most affordable of affordable housing, which has always been, the most has persevered throughout any downturns. And I think if you look at any of the graphs out there of all the different asset classes, self-storage and MH have always been the strongest, and MH, I think, is the strongest of throughout any downturn that we've had. And as has there been hiccups? There has been hiccups. And have there been values come down? For sure. And we're seeing that already today. But that doesn't mean blood in the streets. That doesn't mean that people are going to be, that will, for the most part, will be okay. It'll have some guys that were over leveraged or thought that X, Y, and Z might happen and it didn't. And it's unfortunate, and that's terrible. But it's going to be someone else's opportunity. And I think for the most part, yeah, we'll be okay, especially in our little but not so little world of MH.
Yeah. So you think sellers are going to come down to reality anytime soon?
I think the ones that are forced to will, the others won't.
Right.
You'll have those that have had taken either, whether it was bridge debt 2 years ago that it's going to come due in a year or less, or even guys that didn't take bridge debt necessarily, but they took a loan 5 years ago. As we get further along, now, 5 years ago was 2018, right? And in 2018, rates were in the threes, the beginning of 18. And then of 18, there was actually a little bit of a spike, but you can look at guys that took a 5-year loan or even a 7-year loan, and they thought, oh, I have plenty of runway. Where could rates be already in 7 years? And now, if in a year from now rates are that 7.5 mark, and they haven't increased revenue by enough, they might be forced to become sellers, even though they wouldn't want to be.
Yeah. I think we'll see some of that. I still think we're, probably 12 months from starting to see some of that. I mean, maybe I've heard some issues with, guys in the multifamily space that are in that exact kind of predicament right now.
Yep.
And so I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I think the key is just to kind of keep your ear to the ground and figure out what's going on. It's tough for the entrepreneur in me. It's like, Derek, you got to be patient. And I'm like, what is that word? Are you speaking Spanish? Like, what does that word mean?
Yeah, no, that's definitely tough. And yeah, I think a lot of guys, when I speak to a lot of operators, owners, syndicators, and and it's obviously quiet, but I still like to talk to them. It's not only about deals, there's a relationship there. And I talk to them about what they're doing, and everybody kind of has the same answer. Like right now, still my ears are open for deals. Deals are not really penciling, but in the meantime, I'm focusing on operations, making sure that everything is going smooth, buttoning up things, focusing on things that I didn't have the time to focus on, honestly, when I was busy buying deals. And now it's, all right, how do I cut costs? How do I make sure that I'm running my parks as efficiently as possible? And I think there was a lot of bad press that come from very few deals. You'll have the 2 or 3 deals of the guy out in Texas that defaulted, and everybody's like, oh, F those syndicators, they're just out there for the fees. And then it suddenly becomes this whole catastrophe that everybody's talking about. Nobody knows what they're doing. And it's like, let's all calm down. There was a few stories of guys that were a little riskier. And guess what? If the deals would have actually exited a little bit earlier, or if rates wouldn't have ticked up that fast, then everybody would have been cheering them as heroes. So
right.
Like that fine line where I'm not saying everyone is kosher, and I'm not saying everyone is the best out there, but by and large, the majority of syndicators and operators are hardworking guys that are trying their best to protect your money and trying their hardest to, even in today's environment, to make sure that deals are cash flowing and that they're spinning off good returns to their investors. And kind of wanted to end off with that because of all the stupid bad press that's out there because of just a few, maybe even a few rotten apples out there.
Yeah. And I agree, because I'm on Twitter, and I don't know if you're on Twitter, and you see people on Twitter, lighting up syndicators, like, oh my gosh, blah, just trashing them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you guys have never done a deal. Like you don't know you've never done a deal. Like you've never done anything like that. You don't know what the intricacies are of actually syndicating the deal. You don't know anything about the operations. You've never done that. You've maybe owned like a single family home, right? And you're talking shit on, this thing that you have nothing, you don't know anything about. And I agree with you 100%. All the syndicators I know.
I'm going to pull up a quote that, so one of my dear friends, and actually a good client of mine, Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets, and now he has his own stuff going on, and he's actually a large MH operator and a good friend of mine. And he posted a quote from a book that he was reading, and I'll just read you the quote verbatim. There are many people who think they want to be matadors only to find themselves in the ring with 2,000 pounds of bull bearing down on them. And then they discover what they really wanted was to wear the tight pants and hear the crowd roar. So there are many that, sit on the outskirts and the whole time they're like, oh, if I would be in the ring, I would be doing so much better. And then once they get in the ring, they're like, get me the hell out of here. I'd rather just be watching from the sidelines. And it's like all these guys who have, to be frank, made a lot of money through syndicators. A lot of these guys that are now lighting up these syndicators have made a boatload of money from investing with syndicators. And now suddenly, well, we know better. You get in the ring and then let me know how that's going for you. Yeah.
I think I totally agree with you there. Yeah. So Judah, I appreciate you coming on, man. Tell our listeners where we can find you and how they can get in contact with you if they want to do business with you.
Well, now the easiest way is just going to be the MHP Genius, because now that's just going to be my name.
I'm going to buy the domain, so then you have to buy it from me.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way is just text me on my cell, honestly. I do go through all my emails. We discussed briefly before we started this how many emails come in, but I try to go to bed at night making sure there's not one unread email. So you can shoot me an email, which is more complicated than my phone number. It's judah@PrincetonCapGRP.com, or just text me. Text me on my cell. All my information is all over online, LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. PrincetonCapGRP.com is our website. You can see some testimonials, some recent deals that we've done. But yeah, I would say easiest, just text me and we'll set up a time to chat.
Oh, cool. Well, Judah, again, I appreciate you coming on to the MHP show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you like the show, please comment, tell me if you don't like it, whatever. I don't care. Just send me a message too if there's something that you want us to talk about, or we can have a guest on. But anyways, thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.